Hello, welcome. Before I move on to more stories and more history, I want to finish up with the Spanish. I talked about Perez and his 1774 expedition up here to where he touched on the people of the North Island in Haida and also went down to the Nuu people and commented on what they were wearing and the comparisons to the Haidas and the Nuu clothing. So I wanted to just mention that there was the very next year in 1775, the Spanish sent another expedition up to the north, again probably trying to reach the 60th degree. But again, they just went as far as, they didn't go much further than Perez did. And actually, Perez was on the Santiago in that 1775 expedition, but he wasn't captain. So he was like first mate on the Santiago in the 1775 expedition. And anyway, they sent two ships in that 1775, and it was a smaller ship that actually made it up to further up to the British Columbia and Alaska coast. So and then the bigger ship turned around Juan de Fuca, and when they went back to Monterey, within days, Perez died. So he died in 1775, right after that expedition. So he probably was sick the year before and may have been the reason why he didn't push forward up further north. Okay, and so in 1779, the Spanish sent another exploration up there, and it reached again the Bucareli area as far north as that. And so, but he has a really good list of what was being traded in 1779 in that area with the Haidas, and so I really wanted to mention his expedition of 1779. So. In 1779, a third Spanish expedition headed by Juan Ignacio Ortega on the vessel La Princesa and the Favorite, commanded by Juan de la Bodega y Cuatra, with Francisco Morelli as his second captain. So they once again go up there. So the journals from this third expedition note a return to Haida territories at latitude 55 degrees. So then they say so here's a quote of what they found the Haidas were trading with. They clothed themselves apparently with the fur of one or more undressed skins of otters, sea wolves, bodades, which I think is a species of deer, bears, or other animals which they take in the chase. These dresses cover them from the neck to the middle of the leg. They wear also as a covering a kind of scarf, about a vera and a half long and a vera wide, woven like the pielons, which is an ancient robe of Peru, with a fringe half a quarter of a vera wide, the thread of which is regularly twisted. So that scarf sounds very much like our wool robes. So, so the dress of the women is proof of the modesty and decency of their manners. They wear a long robe of smooth skin tied around the loins, something similar to that of a nun. It covers them from the neck to the feet. The sleeves reach down to the wrists. On this gown, they put many skins of otters or other animals to defend them from the inclemency of the weather. So that was one of the journal entries, and you can see that they compared us to favorably to European crafts. So then they go on to say, given their vivacious nature and fondness for trading, it must be concluded that the Indians are rather industrious. They continually brought mats of various colors, skins of land and sea wolves, sea otter, deer, and bears, and woolen blankets of mixed colors, white, dark gray, and yellow, beautifully woven and well spun, sashes, skeins of thread. So I really like that we see that these traders are going out there, brave as can be, and they're giving things for trade. And one of the things they take out is the skeins of thread. So a lot of times people think the Haidas, because we're off on an island and our island doesn't have mountain goat, that we didn't have mountain goat. But of course we were great traders with our neighbors. And so in 1779, us Haidas go out there and trade with the Spanish. And what do we bring? We bring our furs, our cloaks, our mats, and raw skeins of thread. So we had those skeins, and the Haidas actually have a word for the mountain goat thread yarn, and that's lis, L-I-I-S. So that was our name for that trade item, and that item from the mainland. So I just wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to finish up speaking about the Maori people. I was talking about the similarities of the Maori people. Well, one of the similarities is in our ravenstail robes, we have a very unique technique, and it's called spiral weft. So on the robe that I'm weaving, I'm not using that technique, but there is a totally different robe, well, not totally different, but another style of ravenstail robe that has the side border will have these spiral weft patterns, and they're created by just simply switching. Maybe sometime in my series of videos I'll demonstrate that, but it's a simple switching, and I've been told that was unique in all the world, that we do that's we make those designs through that technique. Well, in my researching and experiencing Maori weaving, they have the house panels, and those house panels are I can't remember the name, but I'll spell it out. And even if I saw the name, I wouldn't pronounce it correctly, I'm sure. But in the video, I'll type it out so you can see that. But in their wall panels that they construct, they make the designs through pulling fiber through these pieces of the rods of wood and rods of different materials, stiffer materials, and then they'll pull through the flax through those rods and secure them in a designed way. And so their technique of building up, and the way they pull it through, poke it through those panels, and then somebody on the other side takes it and then brings it around to where the movement should be, and then pokes it through, and then a weaver on the other side takes it. And in that manner, they do construct their designs in a spiral weft way. So that's another similarity that I found fascinating as far as the Maori and the Northwest Coast weavers. So, okay, I'll stop talking and I'll start weaving. So Captain Cook came here 4 years, touched down at Nuchanuth 4 years after Juan Perez did. So the Nuchanuth people had already got a visitor, had already seen and known about the Spanish. So Cook came along. Now Cook was had been an explorer for quite some years. He had spent some time surveying around the St. Lawrence River on the eastern seaboard, and he gained a reputation for being a good navigator, and in that reputation he was allotted the assignment for exploring the South Pacific. So then his third assignment was to go and search for the Northwest Passage. So he went up. I think by the time he was sent to go to the Northwest Passage, this other explorer in the interior, Hearn was his name, Hearn, he had already gone up from the Hudson Bay area and out to the Northwest in the more northern part of the world. But anyway, he determined on his land-based explorations that this area didn't have the Northwest Passage in it. So anyway, so Cook went to the New Chinook area, touched down, and he stayed there for a whole month in what the people started calling Nootka. I think it was Cook that actually started that term because he thought the people's names were Nootka, but it turned out that's not the case. So he spent a whole month there in that area, and he of course kept a journal, and they repaired their ship there. So he got water, and he got wood, and he repaired his ship, and he had a lot of communication with the local people. So his is really the first time that anybody went on land and actually stayed there and observed the people. So his work is really valuable. So we learned lots from him, and he left that place after a month and went further north. And like I said, he'd already had some knowledge that there was a certain place along the continent which they ruled out that the Northwest coast, the Northwest Passage was. So he actually did not touch down in Southeast Alaska or even British Columbia. He went from Nootka, and it's always safer to move further away from land when you're going a distance. So he moved off the coast, further off the coast, and so he may have seen Haida Gwaii in the fog or in the distance, but he didn't stop, and neither did he stop in the Tlingit territory. He may have seen Tlinkits because the Tlinkits did go up as far as up north, further than Yakutat. They did trade with the people there, the Aleuts and the people up north. So he may have seen them, but he never went to their territories. So he did go up to the Cook Inlet area. Of course, it's named after Cook, and then from there he went up to across the Aleutian, through the Aleutians, and looking for the Northwest Passage up in the further north. And so he didn't, that first winter, he didn't find anything. So he knew, of course, he had stopped in Hawaii, coming to the coast. And so when he got barred by the ice up in the north, he decided to go down back to Hawaii to winter there. And so he did. But the first time he went, before he even went to the Northwest Coast, he was greeted quite amazing. And I think there are people who say they think that the Hawaiians thought he was God, but I don't know about that. But anyway, he goes back there, and now they know he's human. And so anyway, somebody takes one of the small rowboats and doesn't return it. And so they go off after the boat and want to grab it back from the Hawaiians, and the Hawaiians have a scuffle, and Captain Cook dies. So after Captain Cook's death, the crew, the two boats, they still have the Northwest Coast Passage to search for. So they go back up through the Aleutians, and again the ice blocks them. So then they go further. Then they go across to the Kamchatka Peninsula area, and I think they knew about that the Russians had gone that far up in their exploration, and so they were expecting the Russian people to be at that peninsula. So they stopped there, and then they went on to Macao in China. So then they traded in China, stopped in China, and then went back home. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so I wanted to read you what Cook wrote when he was there at the Nuu territories. The flaxen and woolen garments with which they cover themselves must necessarily engage their first care, and are the most material of those that can be ranked under the head of manufacturers. The former of these are made of the bark of a pine tree, beat into a hempen state. It is not spun, but after being properly prepared, is spread upon a stick, which is fastened across to two others that stand upright. It is disposed in such a manner that the manufacturer, who sits on her hams at this simple machine, knots it across with small plaited threads at the distance of half an inch from each other. Though by this method it be not so close or firm as cloth that is woven, the bunches between the knots make it sufficiently impervious to the air by filling the interstices, and it has the additional advantage of being softer and more pliable. The woolen garments, though probably manufactured in the same manner, have the strongest resemblance to woven cloth, but the various figures, which are very artificially inserted in them, destroy the supposition of their being wrought in the loom. it being extremely unlikely that these people should be so dexterous as to be able to finish such a complex work, unless immediately by their hands. They are of different degrees of fineness, some resembling our coarsest rugs or blankets, and others almost equal to our finest sorts, or even softer and certainly warmer. The wool of which they are made seems to be taken from animals, as the fox and brown lynx, the last of which is by far the finest sort, and in its natural state differs little from the color of our coarser wools. But the hair with which the animal is also covered being intermixed, its appearance when wrought is somewhat different. The ornamental parts or figures in these garments, which are disposed with great taste, are commonly of a different color, being dyed, chiefly either of a deep brown or of a yellow, the last of which, when it is new, equals the best in our carpets as to brightness. Okay, so Cook mistakenly calls it pine bark. So what he's talking about would be the beaten bark garments. And when he talks about the manufacturer, he's talking about a weaver, and she sits on her hands, so she's bending on her knees, and then they talk about knots. She's knotting, so it's definitely twining, right? She's twining, and then the loom it's spread upon a stick, which is fastened across to two others that stand upright. So he's not describing the loom that they use now. Right now, the people down south use a double roller, and the warps are held taut with this double roller. Where Cook in 1778 sees these weavers weaving their cedar cloaks on a loom with the two boards standing up vertically and then one reaching across. So that is amazing. I mean, I have read the most recent published works about the history and about the revival of the Nuchanuth people and the Salish people, and nobody mentions this northern loom being used, and they don't mention Cook coming and exploring and seeing this and writing about his firsthand witnessing how they were constructing their garments at that time. And so my thinking is that these northern looms may have been used all along the coast, and then they progressed to the double roller, or they used that double roller always and have been using it for time out of mind, and that the northern loom was starting to be adopted at that time. And then the newcomers came and completely changed our economics, our way of life, infringed on our cultural traditions, and kind of stopped all of the traditional sharing and moving between us neighbors. And so anyway, it's interesting. So I'll talk more about Cook and their explorations and how they influenced the other explorers to come to our area, even though Cook never did come to our area, but he very much was responsible for a lot of the consequential fur trade. So thank you. Bye.